So, you've probably heard of Lord Byron, but you know nothing about him.
Oh no.
But he is the most fascinating person to have ever lived in the entire time. Anyway, he was born in 1788, just, you know, the normal kid of a bunch of rich British people. Dad abandons him at 1 year old, and at 10, a great uncle dies, and all of a sudden, little 10-year-old Lord Byron becomes Lord Byron. He becomes an official lord in Britain. With this comes a great big manor that's all his and a butt ton of money. He goes off to boarding school where he discovers the Tower of Boners, which is his defining trait for the rest of his life. Literally, he sleeps with everyone. Young women, young men, old men, and especially married women. Like, cannot get enough of them. So, also during this time, he starts writing poetry. He starts, you know, engaging in the arts. He publishes some of that, and it just gets panned, just like absolutely torn apart. So Byron, he's like, well, that won't do. He writes this entire long satire and publishes it, essentially just trashing all of the major writers of the time, and essentially giving out the statement that poor people shouldn't write poetry and make art because they're just doing it for money. Only if you're rich, you know, can you make art for art's sake. Great state of mind, by the way. So, Byron then decides to go on this big long vacation all across Europe to Spain and Greece, and he writes down all of his experiences. When he gets back, he compiles it all together in this work called Childe Harold's Pilgrimage. Childe Harold, in the title, is essentially just a thinly veiled copy of Lord Byron. It starts a long trend of his to just make all of his main characters him. Just, it's this idea of the Byronic hero. It's this dark, brooding, but like intelligent and suave kind of hero who like Bailey Fletcher thinks he is. So he does this, he publishes it, and overnight, Byron is famous. Everybody wants to read Byron's work. Everybody is like all in on this great new travel poetry. Meanwhile, but as he's entering high society is like, okay, Byron, you're cool now, you need to get married, you can't keep on having all these affairs with married women. So he's like, okay, there's this prim and proper, like, Christian woman I know named Anne, I'm gonna propose to her. Anne says no, because they have nothing in common. So he does the logical next step, which is he starts having a relationship with his half-sister, Augusta. Anyway, that goes just as well as you think it does. So in less than a year, he's back to proposing to Anne. This time, Anne says yes, because she thinks she can fix him, which, if you ask my high school girlfriend, is a great way to start a relationship. Now, that lasts about a year. They have a kid, Augusta, Ada Byron, who eventually grows up to be Ada Lovelace, the mother of computers. And after like a year of this, they realize, oh wait, we have nothing in common. We hate each other. And so, you know, Byron starts up his affairs again. Anne leaves with Ada to go live with an aunt. And as this is all happening, it's all starting to come out, all of these scandals that are surrounding Byron. His wife has left him. He's fucking his sister. Just like normal stuff. And so society is like, okay, well, we can't really tolerate this anymore. And so they cut him out. They like cut him out of all social circles. And Byron essentially leaves in self-exile to go to the continent. While he's there, he goes to Switzerland to go to this like writer's village in Geneva. And like it's recorded that as soon as he got there, he like fell like a bolt of lightning on the chambermaid. So like keeping up his old habits. He also meets Percy and Mary Shelley and becomes good friends with them. He sees Percy Shelley as like his intellectual equal who like, even though they have like nothing in common philosophically, they match each other's wit. And so they become the best of friends. They spend the summer partying, writing poetry, having a good time. Mary comes up with the idea of Frankenstein, which is awesome, by the way, if you haven't read it. And, you know, they go on with their lives. Byron moves down to Venice, which is the arts capital of Europe at this time. And Byron just goes fucking wild. He has horses shipped in, which Venice is on the water. There are no horses there because why would you need horses? He starts spending his money lavishly. He writes all of his best works like Manfred and Don Juan, and he just has so much sex. Like his body count shoots through the hundreds. He starts affairs with all the high-profile Italian contessas, just like he is known as the mistress of everybody who's anybody. There are numerous accounts of gondoliers bringing their daughters to Byron's home. Sometimes he would pay them to have sex with their daughters. Sometimes they would pay him, the famous poet, to have sex with their daughters. And this is how he lived his life. Anyway, around this, after 10 years of this, he does this for 10 years, he finds out that tragically, Percy Shelley has died in a boating accident. He is drowned, and Byron is left without, in his view, this intellectual equal in the world. He becomes obsessed with death and mortality, and what is he doing in this world? And Byron sits and thinks. And also, there's all these news stories going on in Europe at this time of, okay, there's this revolution down in Greece where the Greeks are trying to fight back against the Ottoman Empire. So Byron sits and thinks, it's like, you know what I could do with my life? I could go join the revolution. So he moves to Greece and he starts just spending his money like nobody's business. He sells his estate back in Europe to raise money for this. And he finds out that it turns out this was a terrible idea. The factions of all the Greek resistance fighters are fighting against each other. Nobody can agree on anything. Everything Byron puts his money into, eventually fails. And just, it's a mess. Byron also, falls in love with his 15-year-old page boy, Lucas, and for the first time discovers somebody who will not accept his advances. And he just is baffled. Anyway, during this time, after failure, he gets sick with a fever, just a normal old fever, and the doctors come in to try and treat it with bloodletting, which worked great. He made a miraculous recovery, and he actually died. But he left all of his money to the resistance, to the Greek fighters, and because it brought all of this attention from across Europe of oh, the great poet Byron has died fighting for Greek nationalism, and everyone, it galvanizes the forces together to fight on for a new day. Now, why do we care about this man, this terrible but extremely fascinating man? There are so many facts that I wanted to include but didn't. Well, this is why. He wrote this.
What are they to such as thee? Must crimes be punished by other crimes and greater criminals? Back to thy hell. Thou hast no power upon me, that I feel. Thou never shalt possess me, that I know. What I have done is done. I bear within a torture which could nothing gain from thine. The mind which is immortal makes itself recreable for its good or evil thoughts, is its own origin of ill and end, and its own place in time. Its innate sense, when stripped of this morality, derives no color from the fleeting things without, but is absorbed in sufferance or in joy, born from the knowledge of its own desert. Thou didst not tempt me, and thou couldst not tempt me. I have not been thy dupe, nor am I thy prey, but was my own destroyer and will be my own hereafter. Back, ye baffled fiends! The hand of death is on me, but not yours.
Yeah.